Hello, and welcome back to the final episode of Strange New Worlds Season 1, the review, I suppose. Quite a unique one for several aspects. Well, it's the season finale. This is also the 6th consecutive week I have had a different set. Really, go back and look. It's 5 different sets in 3 different houses in 2 cities. We've done, a good amount getting this room ready. Still need a mic stand. But most of the work is actually behind the camera with my Enterprise lineage line, the TV stand. And I'm waiting on the 100-foot HDMI cable to arrive before I can get that for the scene-by-scene stuff. We'll see. But hey, I got my ships back. Technically, those boxes are full. It's also, and I did not think I would be saying this for years, like a decade or so, this appears to be the last episode of Star Trek reviews for a while, a month or two. I've kept checking, but it looks like we're just gonna have a break. I say us, it's Paramount. They're just not gonna release more Star Trek. You may see Prodigy airing on Nickelodeon announcements. That's the first 10 episodes we've already done. Lower Decks is confirmed August, but we don't know when. Should be fairly soon, I'd imagine. But it's weird, because it's a relatively small gap. In fact, Prodigy's next 5 episodes would fill it. Not that they're ready, necessarily. Prodigy is confirmed for later this year, by the way. But the weirdest part for me is all those weeks we had overlap of episodes. Not really the finale and the premiere. I kind of get that. Is an overlap, get people staying subscribed. But we had 3, 4, did we even have 5 weeks of overlap at some point? With, Prodigy, I think always overlapped with something in its last 5 batches. There was 2 weeks of Picard and Discovery. Just spread those out, and you have your year. I mean, I don't really understand. Is this some sort of anti-burnout mechanism? I thought the shows were covering that. It just feels weird. You have so much content. You could fill the year. I mean, they kind of stopped at the point where they could fill the year. It just feels weird to have this little gap, but hey, I guess we're gonna be gone till Lower Decks comes back. I might go back and review the old episodes of Picard, maybe as a live stream. I really don't know. But yeah, enough about the future. Let's talk about the finale of Strange New Worlds, the now. And I had this interesting realization in bed last night where I think about Strange New Worlds, right? It's basically done. You've probably seen episode 10. I haven't. But think about Strange New Worlds and what comes to mind, right? What's it been? And going through, I'm like, yeah, they're doing episodic stuff, the serialized characters, but it's an episodic show. I always kind of felt that was the goal. But when I think of Strange New Worlds, what is Strange New Worlds? It's season 1 at least, but they're the same thing right now. I think instantly of all the character arcs, Pike's foreknowledge, M'Benga and his daughter, Una's secret, etc., etc. And I don't think of a single episode. I can think of the plot of every episode if I try. Some easier than others. Some I've really got to sit down and try and come up with them. But I don't think of an episode. And I went on this a bit in Twitter last night. That's not true for TOS, of course, which actually doesn't have any plot lines. As far as I could think, there's no real continuing plot line, even though there's recurring characters and stuff. But it's also not true for TNG and Voyager or Enterprise that did have continuing plot lines. Usually I kind of think of episodes. Yeah, I think it's just that Strange New Worlds is very much a show about its characters, and so the character arcs are foreground with the kind of random episodes is background. And so looking back, Strange New Worlds is serialized to me. That's not even a question. Of course it's serialized. I think of it in the same way as the modern Star Treks. The plots, the ongoing multi-episode plots, not the episodes. There's no season arc. Well, there's kind of a build-up to the Gorn. I think we're getting this season 2, 3. There's definitely build-up there. So I count the Gorn as an arc. It's strange. Strange New Worlds, but it really is strange to have that realization. And I was thinking, is it the episode count? Because Deep Space Nine is the perfect blend of serialized episodic, But of course, Deep Space Nine has 20-something, well, more than double the episode count of Strange New Worlds. And I always thought you needed that for episodic to really get that kind of world and everything. But the Orville, which I've only seen season 1 of. I've been meaning to catch up with my partner, again, waiting on that HDMI cable. The Orville is also about this length. I think it's 13 in its first 2 seasons, so like Discovery length, but is very much episodic. Because I think it focuses on the individual episodes, the stories, where, yes, there are overarching character points and whatever, but they're largely the background. And, like, yeah, there's an episode or 2 about them specifically, I think, with, like, Ed, marriage and stuff. That's a different show. But, yeah, it's interesting still. It's not wrong. You know, it's clearly the direction they chose to have the characters be the set dress, the characters be the focus. I don't know if they wanted to. I don't know if they just didn't know how to do the random episodes as a focus. I don't know, you know, what it is, if it's even accident. But I find Strange New Worlds going through the whole way. I'm like, yeah, it's episodic. And then looking back, I'm like, no, that was a serialized show. Like, sure, what I came to, like I said on Twitter as well, that Strange New Worlds feels like a season of Deep Space Nine if you remove all of the truly episodic episodes that have nothing to do with the Dominion, the Bajoran occupation, whatever plot line the season's going through. And yeah, you'd probably be left with, you know, half the episodes, whatever, especially later on when it really goes into the war. And you'd kind of be missing the bits in between. You'd kind of be going from, like, one random event to another in, you know, the war or whatever. But, like, it'd be about the war. And sure, your episodes don't really connect to each other. I mean, like, it's this mission, some time has passed. It's this mission, some time has passed. It's this mission, but we're still talking about the same things, which I don't know. I found that interesting. It was kind of a disappointing realization. Yeah, because as I said, Strange New Worlds was never going to be the best Star Trek. I've kind of been, I don't want to say disillusioned as it goes on, because I was never in the Strange New Worlds hype train. I was never. I knew it was going to have the problems that it has. But I've always praised that it is truly a modern TOS. And now it doesn't feel like that, with kind of the realization about the serialization and stuff. And I was thinking, TOS has its plot lines going through it too. Like, and then I couldn't think of one. If you could, feel free to leave it in the comments, but I couldn't think of one. And that doesn't mean they shouldn't have had plot lines, but I don't know, I guess I'd hope for something a bit more episodic feeling. But yeah, it's about that 10-minute mark. I try not to ramble on in these intros. Yeah, let's just get into this review. Oh, but what I'm hoping for, by the way, is the conclusion. I don't want a finale, right? I think they're gonna do a finale. I think they have to do a finale. Like the Gorn are gonna invade or something. I don't know what else it could be. Well, unless, like, the Romulans, the Klingons turn up. You know, they gotta bring in that big... well, no, that's the thing. They don't. But I feel like they probably feel they have to. They can't just end on another episode. But I feel if you really want to be that kind of return to episodic Star Trek, you kind of have to, and I kind of want that. I don't want to watch some big, massive finale. That's not why you're here for Strange New Worlds. And that was always TOS. Yeah, for me, TOS was not a binge, but, like, there's no real difference between seasons. You know, I didn't watch it until the 21st century. But, you know, Turnabout Intruder, the last episode of TOS ever, like, yeah, that would have been nice to have something maybe a bit more final, but just do an episode. And then it'll come back in the next season. That's honestly what I want. And I doubt we're going to get it, because it's called Equality of Mercy as well. That could be a standalone. That could also be our Hey, the Gorn are people too carry on from last episode. But we'll see. I was about to do my outro. No, let's get into it. God dang it, they were so close. Hi, Comet. They were so close to doing it. I I was about to praise everything they did, and then the moment it's like, oh, Captain, we're being hailed by the other captain. I'm like, God dang it, they're gonna do the finale thing. Ah, good boy, Comment. Good boy. He doesn't like it when I do the claps to sync up the audio. Alright, let's briefly address the direct finale right now. I mean, it stole the finale of Lower Deck. I'm about to be positive, real positive on this episode. But it stole the finale of Lower Decks. Let's just acknowledge that right away. But, like, God, why'd you have to go and do that? You had the perfect finale for your episodic series. And then you just went and stole the finale of Lower Decks and, like... Again, I don't care. I'm not going to think about it for the next ever. I didn't think about it for Lower Decks, and that's coming back in August. But, yeah, I guess we'll see that in Season 2. Anyways, yeah, Sarek's modern actor didn't play the Romulan captain 0 out of 10. And I hope you enjoyed for today. No, we'll keep going. What I said before about wanting just an episode and not really the finale, again, I can tell the people who did this really thought, and they went, how do we do a non-serialized finale? Because that, ignoring the ending, we're now going to ignore that direct ending for, you know, the rest of the time. Because it's like Season 1 of Discovery. They had their ending, then the Enterprise showed up. God, the live-action modern Star Trek really love this thing. That was an episode of Star Trek. That was an episodic standalone episode of Star Trek. But it was also a special one. It was yesterday's Enterprise. It was... there's probably others. I'm gonna go Yesterday's Enterprise as an example, where, like, yeah, it was just another episode of Star Trek, but it had that sort of gravitas, that specialness. Trials and Tribble-ations, maybe something like that as well, where, yeah, that's the kind of episode for the finale that you just do that. That's amazing. It's Pike's thing. God, this was a roller coaster for me. I did a bit of a live tweet where the first opening line is, Captain's log, the Enterprise is next to the neutral zone. And I went, well, I said I'm not going to swear. Picard got me on a bad habit, but yeah, I'd said some words. But, like, it was the perfect misdirection, because we were expecting the major finale. And so, oh, they're going to bring the Romulans in. That's the finale. That's what everyone hears when the Enterprise is next to the neutral zone. And then it wasn't that. When Pike showed up, the future Pike, okay, let's talk about why this episode is so clever. And then we'll talk about all the reasons it doesn't work, because there are reasons. But let's talk about why it's so clever. Well, first off, you know, the kind of balance of terror, but what if Pike? Interesting concept. Any episode, but how would it change if it was Pike? Interesting concept. But Kirk is problematic. Is a captain, is a character. There's a lot of things wrong with Kirk in the original series, the way he done things. It's pop culture knowledge. Often kind of wrong in the pop culture knowledge, but we're all kind of aware of why Kirk is problematic. The show references it all the time. I mean, Strange New Worlds did, Janeway did. Kirk is problematic. And especially, I think, replacing Pike with how much he was loved in the in Season 2 of Discovery, there's a risk of just Pike's the better captain. And I think I've talked before, I think I said early in Strange New Worlds, Pike killed the Kirk versus Picard battle because it's obviously not Kirk anymore. Pike versus Picard, maybe. What this does is show merit in what Kirk did as a captain and acknowledge that, yeah, Kirk, everything Kirk's done, the vast majority is luck. Like, Kirk could have just as easily started many wars. And I mean, he did do wrong things, but those wrong things could have led to bad actions, and they just happened to not. Bad outcomes, they happened to not. You know, aliens he interfered with could have taken the utopian path, or like 1 billion dystopian paths, and they happened to take the utopian path. And this is a fantastic episode to show Kirk's merit, and that there is merit and value in what Kirk does, and he's still a good captain despite some of those flaws that he has. It also does a lot. Comment, you can't get that close to the camera. Yeah, do you want to be on camera? Is that a little comment? It also does a lot that I've asked for. It gives Pike the reason not to change the future, because there are many easy ways to do it. There still are. I'll get back again to the reasons why this episode didn't work later, but Pike now has a reason not to change the future. Spock is given the reason to dedicate himself so hard to trying to give Pike a life that he would be satisfied with after the accident. Spock now knows, or at least believes, that, and as we know, the more Spock believes things, the more he insists he knows them, despite how wrong he may be. But Spock now believes that Pike is going through and becoming paralyzed, becoming, actually, I don't think he knows. Okay, Comet. I don't think Spock knows the exact circumstances around Pike's accident, but Spock believes, I think all he knows is that he believes that Pike is going through with the accident, is sacrificing himself, because if he doesn't, Spock will have something bad happen to him. He'll die, he'll get the same fate, he'll get some equally bad thing. With the relationship Spock has with Pike, and that will continue to develop over the series, that's where the dedication comes from. And he has the time to prepare. That's why in the menagerie, he gets down to business. He knows what to do. Yeah, I mean, both those are satisfied for me now. And this episode was so clever in so many ways, in how they do the finale for Strange New Worlds, in acknowledging Kirk's value and setting that value, arguably. In Pike's, the answered questions for both Pike and Spock storylines, it's fantastic. I think that's all the fantastic reasons. I might cover it in the scene by scene. Let's get into some of the weird things. So, according to this episode, Pike gets into an accident. Therefore, he can't captain the Enterprise. Therefore, Kirk takes over, etc. Therefore, TOS. I've actually just realized another problem, in that Pike was training at the Academy, so why is he a captain? You could say it's because they're refitting the Enterprise for the TOS appearance, but we'll get into those things. It looks like Strange New Worlds in this episode. Because Paramount believes that this is what the Enterprise has always looked like, and no. The big problem with that is that's not why Kirk took command. The accident happened after Kirk took command. Because in the menagerie, when they go to whatever starbase Pike is at, that just happened. Actually, I think it happened like a month ago, he says. Maybe it does roughly line up. But the problem is, Kirk doesn't know. Kirk's surprised. And they're like, God, Kirk, how do you not know? It's been all over subspace for like however long, he says. Why would Kirk not know if that's the reason he got promoted? You think they'd call him up and be like, hey, Kirk, Pike's been in some horrific accident. The Enterprise needs a captain. Are you free? And when he takes over, by apparently people who have been there for a while, because evidently the crew change doesn't happen if Pike stays captain. Uhura was still there. Spock was still there. Chapel and Banga were all still there. You think they'd be talking about the horrific accident Pike just had that they did. Well, Spock knew, but the others didn't know was going to happen. By the way, that's not speculation. Spock explicitly states that perhaps you got in an accident, therefore another captain took over. It doesn't break canon, but it breaks a good chunk of early TOS. Actually, up through the menagerie, isn't that season 2? Oh no, it is season 1. According to the menagerie, to Memory Alpha, the menagerie was the 15th and 16th episode of Star Trek. It actually is both ways, episode and production number. Now, I'm willing to give them that the production order number is the canon order of Star Trek, because that puts Balance of Terror in episode 8. Wait, is it episode 8 both ways? I think Memory Alpha is listing production order, because I swear the Balance of Terror is a super late episode by release. But anyway, yeah, it kind of breaks the first 16 episodes of Star Trek at least. I guess the timing might roughly line up if they could do all that stuff in a month. I don't know. The TOS dating's always kind of weird. I guess you could say the menagerie is the first. But uniform changes. Yeah, this is the point. Is it doesn't really work. And why was he training cadets anyway as an active captain? You then have, as I said, so the crew rotation doesn't happen unless Kirk becomes captain. That feels weird. I'm kind of willing to accept it though. It is strange that, everyone would have stayed on the Enterprise for 7 years, especially the people who aren't like captain. There are a few things. First off, that the reason that's true is because otherwise they would have had to recast the entire TOS cast, and yeah, because you need Sulu. Well, you need the bridge at least, right? You need the bridge. You could get away with not doing Bones. They did Scotty as a voice, and I like that was kind of in the tunnel, so it was over communications. It was kind of distorted, echoey. It's clearly not James Doohan, who, might I point out, is dead, but he's been dead for a while. But it's like distorted enough that you can be like, I get what you're going for. I'm a bit worried it's a prelude to him coming on season 2. That's what a lot of people have said. There was a Reddit post recently. Are you terrified that Kirk is coming to Strange New Worlds in season 2? And a lot of the responses are like, honestly, sort of, but not really. What I'm terrified of is Scotty. And yes, completely agree. And by the way, if Kirk's not coming in season 2, and this was misdirection for them filming this episode, and people might have seen, brilliant. But M'Benga is evidently the doctor. They don't say he's the chief medical engineer, but why wouldn't Bones be at that meeting while M'Benga is? Sure, the Romulans may be medically similar to Vulcans, and he's kind of a Vulcan expert, but are we saying that the reason M'Benga gets demoted from chief medical officer is Kirk takes over and is like, I don't really want M'Benga to be the chief medical officer. I've got this Bones guy. M'Benga, you're demoted? Like, you'd think you'd transfer M'Benga. That felt really weird. Having Ortegas play the role of whoever the guy in TOS was, the racist guy, that really felt weird because I get none of that from Ortegas. None of that from anything we've seen as Ortegas. If anything, she's incredibly accepting of everything. When she thinks people are just satisfying their kinks in the corridors, she's like, yeah, whatever. But now she's kind of racist because the Vulcans look like Romulans. Like, Leon could have fit that. I mean, yeah, she's off doing her own thing, but that didn't work with me, especially like line for line things. And then at the end, when he's kind of nodding at everyone, he passes Ortega. He's like, I know you're a racist now. You don't, but I know. The guy who did the Romulan commander did a great job. Kind of reminded me of Drock, but he did a really good job. I think it felt like they looked at that. Mark Leonard, is it? Mark Leonard, the guy who played that commander in TOS. They looked at his performance and tried to cast for that. That being said, as I said it at the beginning, I would have given them all the brownie points if they cast Sarek's modern actor as the Romulan commander, like regardless of how good of a fit he would be. If you don't know, in TOS, the guy who plays Sarek, actually in all the classics, in TNG as well, his first role in Star Trek is the Romulan captain from Balance of Terror. I think it's technically a Romulan commander, whatever. But that would have been hilarious to come on screen and it's Sarek's actor. It would have confused like newer viewers. I get all the reasons they wouldn't have, but I would have loved it. Yeah, it just would have made me happy. I loved when my partner and I were watching Star Trek. The menagerie comes before we see Spock's dad, his actual dad. I think that's season 2. But anyway, when the Romulans showed up and my partner saw what they looked like for the first time, her reaction was like, oh, it's Spock's dad. And it'd been a while. I'd forgotten. And I'm like, actually, I'm pretty sure that is Spock's dad. Like, not, but that's the guy who's eventually going to play Spock's dad. Yeah, so that would have been fun. What else? I felt the speech, the Romulan captain speech, was I'm pretty sure word for word the same one from TOS. It didn't feel as deserved. The poetry wasn't there from TOS. In the way it was there, the Romulan commander wouldn't have any way of knowing. He doesn't know about Pike's whole foreknowledge, this whole timeline thing. He doesn't know. It felt kind of weird in this timeline coming from him. But I appreciated a lot of what they did. I appreciate kind of the added backstory about this Romulan guy. You know, the stuff on the Romulan ship was great. With the commander who was dissenting, immediately highlighting Ortegas' racism and kind of the bloodlust, showing the other side also having that. You know, they're not monstrous enemies. They're just like us. It's true for any war. It's true for every war throughout history, past, present, future. And that was accidentally a risky thing to say, but no, past, present, future. I'm pretty sure that wasn't in TOS. I'm pretty sure TOS was strictly from the perspective of the Enterprise crew. It has been a while since the Ounce of Terror and the Menagerie. I'm willing to accept details that I've forgotten, but there are some things like that they didn't know. Kirk, they're surprised Kirk didn't know. Yeah, I know that. I'm extraordinarily confident in that. It did feel kind of weird the Romulans could get the fleet in 2 hours from Romulus, which, as I recall, isn't... it's kind of close, actually, to the neutral zone, but I don't get the sense it's closer than Earth. It's weird, like, the mining drones, I thought about this a lot. Like, what's letting them know this isn't a fleet of battle cruisers? Their sensors? Surely? You can tell, we've always been able to tell, like, the different subsystems on the drones. I guess you could say there's some sort of cloak thing. Like, it's enough, as Kirk says, it's enough to bluff with. Maybe the Federation has sensors that conceal the weapons and stuff, but it didn't end up mattering, really, in the end. Yeah, I liked a lot of it. There's certain underlying messages. You could look at it how I've done it, or you could look at it as a story where trying for peace was wrong. It is. I mean, that's what it is. The trying for peace was the wrong option. That doesn't feel right coming from a Star Trek. It's a byproduct of everything else good coming from it, and it wasn't really the focus. Maybe it would have been good to acknowledge it in some way, but I'm willing to let it go because I recognize everything else it's trying to do, and it's a much, much more positive on there than this little kind of oddity almost. I'll say that the guy they recast for Kirk, it took me a while to realize that he kept reminding me of, I'm pretty sure it's Jim Carrey. I am face blind, mind you. But, like, he reminded me a lot of Eggman in the Sonic movies, the kind of his expressions and stuff. The moment we saw him, I'd seen him before. The moment he started talking, I don't like the recast. You know this. They never feel like the actual person. Actually, I'm going to get into that, because Spock really did. But that didn't sound like Kirk. Was my biggest problem. That, and I don't mean that didn't sound like William Shatner. I don't think you're ever going to do that unless you actually cast William Shatner, but it didn't sound like him. Is that just me? I don't know. I almost want to say it sounded like a child playing Star Trek, but not quite. It was very weird. It felt like almost an actor going, I can't do William Shatner. I guess I'm going to do something completely different in my own thing. And it didn't work. Again, I say this is why you don't recast, but I want to say Spock, from his first line, Ethan Peck, who, as I've said before, we don't talk about Spock because he's so not the character from TOS. He does not do Spock. This, from his first line, was two things. It was so clearly and blatantly different from the character he's played in Strange New Worlds and Discovery. It was leagues different. It was clearly not the same person. It was so obviously Leonard Nimoy's Spock, and I accepted him instantly. Now, that's also kind of a thing that doesn't work, in that a lot of, like, kind of my theory, how does Spock change, what changes it, but even ignoring my specific theory, why is Spock different now without that change from Pike to Kirk? I don't see what could have happened and why he could have gone inward emotionally, like it regressed emotionally, because he even talks about one of your human jokes. Like he seems to not really have that understanding about humanity. One of your human jokes. I don't drink coffee, I drink tea. No, I don't want tea. And as Pike says, the more things change, the more they stay the same. I'm like, no, that's not this, because this character is clearly fundamentally different from the Spock that we've seen thus far in modern Star Trek. But yeah, he's nailed Leonard Nimoy Spock. And so clearly it can be done. Like, what I've learned from this episode is it's not a fact that it's not Leonard Nimoy. There are actual changes that have been made to the character of Spock intentionally. I mean, I don't think anyone would have denied that before. But the writers and the actor can do Leonard Nimoy's Spock. They can do Spock if they want. They just are choosing not to. And it was a joy to watch this Spock. To watch Spock, the Spock. I say the Spock. I mean, Leonard Nimoy's characters does kind of change as TOS moves into the movies, into TNG and stuff, but it's still fundamentally the same character. I mean, just seeing that character again, yeah, he nailed it. Anything else is the comment has joined me again. It was interesting having Leon on the Farragut, bringing her in and doing nothing with that. Thinking about it now, I kind of think Leon was added solely, actually probably to fulfill some contractual obligation to appear in 10 episodes that I think most actors have when you sign onto a show like this, but also to highlight that Una was going to go to prison, because Leon never showed up again after being transported from the Farragut, which, by the way, is a TOS thing. We know he served on a Farragut before the Enterprise. I don't think it said his rank. He was in charge of someone, or no, it's the court martial. I think he might have been either a cadet with a friend or in charge of someone. See, these are the details that are a little fuzzy now. But yeah, we had a string of really bad command decisions that don't matter because we're gonna abort the timeline, I guess, where Pike's fleeing from the Romulans and, like, he's just fled, and then he's like, oh god, I gotta check on Spock. I guess the bridge will be fine without you. And then we went straight to Nurse Chapel, who's standing over Spock's bed, like, mourning that he's probably gonna die. And I'm like, yeah, the 50 other people in sickbay, I understand your emotional detachment to Spock, but you've got a job to do. In classic Star Trek, they would have that moment of hesitation, then get to work. He does not like that I'm talking to nobody. So, yeah, all in all, I think that episode was much more good than it was bad. I think its worst offense, honestly, is muddling the timelines, isn't it always? Even if you ignore the fact that Kirk definitely didn't take command because Pike wasn't there, why is Pike training cadets as an active captain? Well, actually, let me get to this, because I hinted it earlier. There are still easy ways to avoid this fate, like retire? On the day of your accident, Pike, send those letters and just retire. Why not? He actually now has foreknowledge about the Romulan invasion. Why not now just try and edit that? Like, Klingons can send another dude, or even just a dude to kill Pike. Like, there are options. And they did the thing where they copped out of, like, oh, in every timeline we attempt to change it, Spock dies. I'm like, bullshit, he does. Tell me how Spock dies in the timeline where you just retire. There's a timeline where you tell everyone to leave and then you, like, fake your death. There's a timeline where you tell everyone to leave and you just commit suicide in that reactor, I guess. I don't know. You spend 7 years staging an elaborate hoax where you hire doubles for the cadets, and, like, they show up and you, like, hide them in the closet or whatever, and you get body doubles, or you build little robots or dummies that you position in the training room. You bribe, or you make friends with the people who are running the simulation. You get them in this elaborate hoax all in, and then you stage an accident, and then you all go in, and, well, like, the cadets aren't there, or maybe you do, the reactor's not even on, and then, like, you have lunch or something, and you blow up the reactor, and then you die. I don't know, maybe you enter the wheelchair, they fake the burns, you get in with a good doctor, and, like, whenever anyone is in the room, you go in the wheelchair, but afterwards, or I guess when Spock comes, you go to some special home, and then when Spock comes, you go in the chair, you put the makeup on, and then when he leaves, you just get up, because you're perfectly fine. Like, what about that timeline? You can't say every timeline but one this thing happens. What about, okay, no, he did say the timelines where they tried to say things, but, like, Endgame did this too, where he's like, oh, how many timelines do we defeat Thanos? 1. What about the timeline where that rat stepped on that button 1 second later than it did? Huh? Huh, Strange? What about that timeline? Yeah, they really copped out. And it's like, I feel it kind of muddled the message a bit. Every time that you try and change things, Spock suffers. There are 2 kids to think about. Like, are we just ignoring that? Are we ignoring the whole war? Everyone else that died? Like, are we just ignoring that? Like, if there's a timeline where Pike survives, Pike doesn't get in an accident, I comment, the cadets survive, and Spock gets in an accident, Spock would be down for that. Like, Pike's literally sentencing these kids to death, and because he doesn't want Spock to be crippled. Let's do something else that was nice. From the moment they talked about from the first wooden ships, I went, oh, they're redoing Balance of Terror. I loved... there were some bits that didn't work in recreating Balance of Terror, like Ortegas being that racist guy. But a lot of it did, and kind of the things that should be the same, the vast majority made sense. That Romulan commander's speech didn't, as I said before, but the vast majority made sense. The Romulans are still doing what they're doing, regardless of what Pike does. Kirk isn't really well known, or the Enterprise, by the Romulans at this point. A lot was really well done. Almost the perfect finale, like summary of Strange New Worlds. The majority was really well done. There were just a few bits that didn't really work, a few bits that really kind of muddled the timeline. Well, no, they just don't work with the timeline, and that kind of brought it down a bit, but it was overall enjoyable. Comment, I think you gotta go somewhere else. I hope you can't hear him eating the sweatshirt core, but it's the only thing that calms him down. I think you gotta go down. You gotta go down because it's time for the scene by scene. Pike started off, he entered Strange New Worlds as the best captain to a lot of people. I guess he's staying, but he's not gonna be able to chew on these things. And he kind of devolved into... there's someone who's been in my comments who really hates Pike. He thinks he's like the worst captain ever. He's kind of convincing me as some irresponsible, negligent monster who shouldn't be in command. I disagree that he's like completely awful, but he's got a lot of good points if you look at my description of, I think, all my videos. But he's kind of devolved into a character who quips, tells jokes, and his main character trait is, yeah, he's good at cooking. Has there been a single episode that hasn't referenced the fact that Pike can cook? So could Cisco, but you don't hear Cisco going off about it every episode. And he's always cooking. Can you do something else? It's getting to the point where even if everything else about Pike is wrong, what I'm saying is wrong, like, he should do other things than just cook. Is this some contractual obligation? Did Anson Mount just get hungry a lot? Does he have some medical condition where he constantly has to eat, and so he just has to make his own food on set? He's really felt like he's devolved, Captain Pike, from a capable, charming captain to a naive, negligent captain who really doesn't take things as serious as he should, but by God, does he want to be a chef more than a captain. Riker became a chef in retirement. Pike, well, he just doesn't accept he's a captain. I changed the image and then remembered what I was going to talk about. This episode actually enforces that point of view, because this is saying if Captain Pike wasn't the captain, we would have averted a universe-ending war. And yeah, I've remembered as well, some nice little references like, yeah, Spock can't die, or if Spock dies, even worse things happen. The reunification of Romulus and Vulcan never happened. The supernova, it consumes Romulus. But yeah, like, so much bad happens, and to the point where the Picard Discovery timelines we see are gonna be completely unrecognizable. The Wrath Khan uniform is really nice, but as with every uniform that they change, the only bit I don't like is the thing they changed. Now, it's a different timeline. Like, yeah, they've Yesterday's Enterprised it, haven't they? Like, I can kind of accept it here because it's the same uniform, but a little different because of the, ripple effects of the timeline change. This has got to be decades. 30 years after Balance of Terror, or I did like Equality of Mercy. Is that a quote? Because I feel like that's gotta be some, like, Equality of Mercy is something bad. But I might have loved a better play on Balance of Terror. I don't know, a Scale of Mercy. You'd work on it, but hey, it was nice seeing the uniform though. I do find it funny though that we went from me saying, I think I put this actually in the video, one of the reviews, the trailer analysis, that Pike's gonna be the first officially religious captain, probably Christian, to the Enterprise chapel doesn't exist anymore. It's now the cargo bay. Which, yeah, the Enterprise had a chapel in TOS that is used in one episode exclusively for this scene. The Balance of Terror episode. I liked another little detail is the woman died in this timeline, didn't they? In the Balance of Terror timeline, I'm pretty sure the man died. I'm pretty sure Balance of Terror ends with the woman in the chapel. Okay, it was used for 2 scenes. Mourning the death of her fiance. But yeah, I kind of found that funny that let's just not acknowledge the Enterprise had a chapel. I was struggling to tell if they changed the set at all for this episode, made it look more TOS. I'm not sure. I couldn't spot any differences, but I don't know this bridge too well, to be honest. It did feel a bit different, but that's because I was basically watching Balance of Terror, and, Spock was a different character. Spock was TOS Spock. It had a different feel as an episode, so I don't know if it was just that. Yeah, another thing, it's not the original Romulan design. Actually, I wonder if they have warbirds painted over them, which wasn't universal from what I remember in TOS, but this one did have the little warb paint under it. That effect, it's better. It's more modernized, but it was very strange new TOS to the point where I think they sacrificed modern quality to make it more TOS. There was actually another shot in the editing that felt weird when the guy got sucked into space in this scene. Actually, literally right now. Hang on. Yeah, this bit. That's the worst effect I've seen in a long time. But hey, it's fine. This was, really well done better. But let's go into something I've been meaning to talk about for a while. I keep forgetting. The effects team. I don't know who to blame exactly, but so let's take the teams out of it. The visual effects, like specifically these the scenes that would have been entirely created by the CGI team, right? They have been awful in this series. The editing, not the quality, that's fine, but there's been a chasm of disconnect between the story and what's being said and what those scenes show. I'll spit off some examples as we go. This scene, I will just play it a bit. When the ship blows up, I actually got copyright struck for this once. Yeah, the Enterprise is right next to the station, which I'm pretty sure wasn't how TOS went, but I'll give it to them. And I might be wrong, again, fuzzy on the details. When the Enterprise is facing off with the Romulan fleet, they are both on their own sides of the neutral zone, a few hundred meters apart. The neutral zone being light years across. Again, in this episode, in Balance of Terror, the Romulans fired on the Enterprise and they backed up at warp, like for minutes, and then the thing dissipated, and that's how they learned it wasn't effective at range. That is the kind of range this thing is not effective at, is light years. Maybe it was impulse, but they backed up for minutes. This one, the Enterprise is here. I have these models, but the bird of prey swoops in to like here and fires. Again, like the bird of prey is small. You can see both of these right next to each other. That was the distance it wasn't effective at. Like, no, those ships, the bird of prey is closer to the Enterprise than the bird of prey is to this asteroid in this scene. Going to previous episodes, I think I talked about the black hole thing in the episode actual review, where the maneuver the Enterprise said it was going to do around the black hole isn't what was shown. You had the nebula, where they couldn't see the Gorn, but like you clearly could visually see the Gorn, even though apparently the sensors couldn't detect it. In the last episode, you had the shuttles going down to the planet, clearly like passing mountains and stuff. They are on the planet, well, flying, but they're very deep in the atmosphere. As you hear him talking to Una, we are entering the upper atmosphere we may lose communications any point. No, like, maybe that was from the past, that, but like, there's just it's a weird conjuncture of this line does not match up with what's happening on the screen, and it is constant. I don't know if they just don't care. They're like, this is a nice shot, let's do that. Who cares what's happening? If the VXF team was just given older scripts, so like, or if they just weren't given any script, they were kind of given a rough description and they had to make that. I don't know, but throughout this whole series, the effects in none of the others, not the live action ones, which is the same kind of editing, Discovery or Picard have been fine. I guess Picard didn't have many of those shots, but the editing has been a different show. The VFX have been a different show to the script and the actually filmed shots. It's been awful. And if Strange New Worlds is nominated or wins an award for best editing, then God, we know that these awards are just bogus and given to the popular shows, because it's been awful to the point where it's seriously detracting from the episodes. And it's like, well, hang on, no, that's not what happened, or that's not what you said was going to happen. I don't know why, but it's been constant. I'd be interested to know if whoever kind of coordinates that, or the VFX team, whatever, if they're different from the other series, or like, I'm not sure how integrated it all is, but yeah, that's been awful throughout Strange New Worlds. The shots are fine. Again, they're put together well. They just don't match what's going on. Look, even on here, that's like a massive neutral zone. Even if we accept these stations are right next to each other, which they're clearly not, it's a massive neutral zone. Yeah, that's got to be Romulus Remus. I'm pretty sure that's the Balance of Terror map, especially with the Klingons on this side, the Romulans on this side, and then so close to the Federation. It doesn't line up with all the other maps we've been getting, but it's probably pretty close to the Balance of Terror ones. Oh, like, again with the casting, wrong image, but it's weird that Samuel Kirk would be on the Enterprise with Pike, but not with Kirk. Like, did he forcefully get transferred off? Have we never had relatives working together? Is that policy? Did he, like, why wouldn't he have gotten the offer to work on, I kid you not, it's like Earth Colony 7 or something. It's the most 60s name ever that Samuel Kirk goes to work on. Also, they're still wearing the Strange New Worlds uniforms, not the TOS ones. I'm pretty sure. Is Kirk's different, actually? I can't tell if the collar's a bit different. I think I'm thinking of Discovery, but they still got the insignia on the side. Discovery did this too with Ephraim and Daw, where they had like Strange New Worlds stuff in TOS episodes. It just feels weird. I know it's budget saving. You can't recreate it all just for the one episode. But I say that. Look at Trials and Tribble-ations. Look at In a Mirror Darkly, which was 2 episodes. I'll give it that. That was 2 episodes. The Enterprise set was just 1 episode, though, I think. Yeah, the Enterprise set, recreating that was just 1 episode. I don't know what the per episode budget is for Strange New Worlds compared to Enterprise, but it's got to be higher given the production values. I don't know, but yeah, it felt weird having so much Strange New Worlds in this episode. I also wonder how different the Romulan ship is. I think it looked wrong when they showed it on the screen the first time. It's probably, the Romulan ship had real funky lighting, didn't it? It was the very purple and green. The uniforms aren't really right either. I see how they've tied them in, but again, it's completely different. Actually, that does bother me more thinking about it. It matches their set more, but as I said, I think their set's kind of wrong. What I remember is, it's fine they got rid of the helmets, by the way, but what I remember was they had the big ball that later became the cloaking device. That's what they kind of controlled it around. Yeah, I would have liked a bit more faithful recreation there of the Romulan ship. I'll say it does kind of gel with the aesthetic TNG later establishes better. The TOS Romulans were always, they always felt very Federation in their design and stuff. The same kind of corridors, lighting, and everything. Would have liked a Reman. I would have liked a Reman on the ship, but whatever. Maybe it was expensive. Oh, hang on. There's a detail I think I've just clocked. Ortegas and however, I honestly didn't even know if he was in Strange New Worlds or not until the end. Someone pointed out that Khan and Ops in Strange New Worlds had been swapped for some reason. Um, and it's been swapped back to what it was in TOS for this episode. God, just as we're getting to the end of the episode, my pug has decided to burrow under a blanket. The Romulan fleet is interesting. I guess we did complain about the copy-paste fleet last time. It's fine, they added more ships. Hey, something for Eagle Moss to sell. They do kind of look Romulan-y. These ones especially. I'm not too sure about that flagship, but this era was kind of different anyway in its design. And it's interesting that you have the birds of prey. Well, the original one in this episode was a prototype. It didn't even have warp, actually. Oh, hang on. In Balance of Terror, it had to be dropped off by a mothership, I think, because it didn't have warp. It didn't have the range. That might be why the whole fleet is here, like, just as standby. Yeah, that fixes that. Where was I going? Oh, yeah, that original ship was a prototype that maybe they built out of the shell of an existing ship. That's why it's here. But it's kind of weird to have so many of that class. I like they're all gray, though. I'll give them that. They did stick with that gray material that everyone in TOS used. I've always theorized it was some new material discovered between Strange New Worlds and TOS that was so good everyone just starts using it until eventually it gets refined or they paint it, titanium gets existed, whatever. I don't think TOS Enterprise is a titanium hull. I can't remember. Is this a picture of the guy who originally paid Pike and the station commander they're at now? I don't think it's actually the actor who played original Pike. I think it's someone who looks like him, but he's getting like that turtleneck cage uniform. Oh, it's April, isn't it? I think that's someone who's supposed to look like the guy that played Pike in the cage in the 60s, and April in cage style uniforms. That's a nice touch. Hang on, rewind a bit. Have we just established that the Klingon monks in Boreth have time travel capability? Because I think we've just established that the Klingons have time travel capability. Then again, so has the Federation with the slingshot maneuver, and we never use it. I was about to say, why didn't Pike use the slingshot maneuver? Then I remembered Kirk discovered it. So, or at least like Pike. Actually, no, Kirk accidentally discovered it in an episode, didn't he? I don't remember which one, but I'm pretty sure they accidentally discovered the slingshot maneuver. That was like a plot point. There you go. There is TOS's one arc, is discovering time travel and then using it every now and then for like archaeology. Yeah, and I think that's it. I thought, about an hour. I thought this review would go on for ages. Yeah, that was exactly the finale it should have been. That was how you do an episodic finale, and then they tacked on another ending that was just the ending from Lower Decks, which, might I remind you, is the next series to come out. So yes, it was a while ago, but that was just the ending of Lower Decks. Lower Decks did it better. Lower Decks did it first. That's important. I would also point out that Picard stole Lower Decks' ending, but I think Picard might have supposed to have been coming out first? Or was that Lower Decks and Discovery? God, I don't know. Are we just gonna steal all of Lower Decks season finales? However season 3 ends, I'm gonna predict what show is gonna steal that ending. I don't know. It's just, what can happen from that ending? Like, they get her back? They don't? We just cast someone else? Where was Pike's first officer in Balance of Terror? Oh, it's Spock, isn't it? Duh. Spock's his first officer. I was looking for a yellow shirt. Actually, that could happen. You could just make Spock the first officer, but it feels weird to toss Una out just like that. I mean, they killed Hemmer. Too little, too late to really establish that precedent of these characters are mortal. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said with Lower Decks, I'm not gonna think about it. Not because I don't care. I don't really care, honestly. I do with Lower Decks, but I'm just not the kind of person who's going to be like, oh, what's going to happen? Even now, with Lower Decks approaching. I mean, I honestly think Lower Decks, kind of like what it did with Riker, it's just going to wrap it up real quickly. With what they did with Shax, I could see them just not addressing it. No, I think the first episode's going to be rescuing Freeman, but I'm getting ahead of myself, and hey, that's for a few weeks from now when you see me again, where I probably will have a different set, and
I'll hopefully be set up at that point. But I don't know. Keep an eye out on Twitter, I guess. Maybe the community tab. I might live stream a Picard review. My problem is I'm up in like the AM. As I'm finishing this, it's almost 6 a.m. Because of my weird schedule and with my partner and everything. It was good. Strange New Worlds. It wasn't the return to the classic style of doing things. No, it never was going to be. I mean, I knew that going in. What I consider the classic style of storytelling, it wasn't that, but it was good. It was more good than it was bad, and hey, let's hope it just gets better over time. But now, oh, we're gonna get into the animated series, Lower Decks and Prodigy, the best of the 5 that are airing right now. And yeah, I guess I will see you next time, sometime in August. Who knows? Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. I did that bit.